and welcome to Career Landscapes, a peek into professional lives, presented by One Voice for Change. I'm your host, Felicity Minch, and today we have the honor of meeting civil engineer Serina Gelinas. And I would like to take a moment and read a little bit about her. At age 15, a Girl Scout engineering program sparked her interest in civil engineering after discussing career paths with a Coast Guard Academy cadet. She attended a magnet high school, completing 2 years of high school and 1 year of college simultaneously. A physical therapy session during senior year introduced her to submarine construction at Electric Boat. The engaging work and opportunity to build submarines appealed to her, having grown up around submarine base due to her mom's job. She balanced engineering with her ballet passion by choosing University of Hartford's programs. Despite pandemic delays, she persisted and interned at Electric Boat in 2021, one of only 7 women out of 21 students. Undeterred by male-dominated fields due to non-traditional interests like rock climbing and adult gymnastics, she quickly transitioned from the rigorous internship to a full-time role at Electric Boat after graduating in 2022. She volunteered for an off-site submarine construction support position in Virginia, exemplifying her determination and drive in this unique career, and still considers the coolest job ever. Welcome, Serina. Thank you for being with me today.
Of course, and I'm really happy to. I'm really excited.
Oh, this is so exciting, so exciting. So I'm sure on the bio, I didn't get to cover everything. So tell us a little bit about your job and just whatever you'd like to talk about your job.
So, in my position, I work a lot with our design department, and we work on currently direct construction support with the shipyard, both down in Newport News, where I am right now, as well as our home base in Groton, Connecticut. We are really pushing on designing and building the new Columbia class of submarines, which is the latest ballistic missile submarines, which is considered the future in strategic deterrence. Um, I, as Felicity said, I grew up around the submarine base in Groton. That was my whole life. That's all I knew. And so learning about Electric Boat while listening to people talk at PT was really interesting, and it really struck my interest, coupled with civil engineering, which is your bridges, your roads, your water treatment, all of the infrastructure that you drive by and drive on every day. It really dovetailed nicely. And so taking structural analysis classes, taking steel design classes, really drove home that passion. And the internship was my dream shot. I interned in a fantastic group. I made a lot of contacts. My mentor from my internship, I still call while I'm down here in Virginia. I still I'll show up in his office at least a couple times a day when I'm live and in living color. So I'm still in contact with him. He's still a really great resource. I'm learning so much every day. I've learned so much while I've been down here in Virginia. And as Felicity said, I still look around some days at some of the stuff that we do. And I just sit here and go, I have the coolest job in the world, because who else can say at 23 that one day in July, when they were anticipating sitting in an office all afternoon, their mentor said, "Hey, be ready in half an hour. We're going to go down to the yard. They're rolling out the new submarine," and gets to stand on a pontoon in the Thames River in Connecticut and look up at a fast attack submarine that hasn't even seen the water yet. And it was really cool. And so um, the next year, I applied for a full-time position, getting ready for graduation, and I interviewed on a Friday. They called me on Monday, And I didn't even have to think about it. They said, we can give you 30 days. I said, I don't need it. I don't need 30 seconds. I'm in.
That's great. That's just a wonderful story. Amazing. So, how does your work involve collaboration with other engineers, or are you on a team? Is collaboration very important, or do you work more by yourself? How does that work?
A lot of our projects are assigned independently, but you are never an island by yourself. As I said, I still speak to my mentor from when I was an intern. I've had several mentors through my group. Down here, my entire group is set in one conference room. It's very tight quarters. And so we're all really tight, we're really close. And so there, heck, today I'm working on something because all engineers go through peer reviewing before something gets sent out. And so me and my peer reviewer were not exactly, we were having a spirited discussion over our cubicle walls about some of the comments because he gave comments that I didn't necessarily agree with or I didn't understand. And especially down here, directly supporting construction, I'm seeing a lot of systems that I haven't before, such as electrical, piping, mechanical, and I'm supporting all of these. So I'm working with a lot of outside departments. I'm tapping into resources from my home department. So I'm working on a project and I've involved purchasing and I've involved drawing reviewers. So you really get to work with everyone in a lot of different positions. And it's really, really cool to be in that cross company collaboration.
Mhm.
And I also have sort of a unique viewpoint because of my internship. I actually interned in a different department than where I currently work. And so I actually have a skill set that a lot of my coworkers don't in one of our company systems. And so there have been times that they've come to me and said, "Hey, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure how to do this. How do you do this in this system if we're going to try and transition to it?" So, and if I don't know, I can always point them to one of the people that I worked with as an intern because their department actually wrote that software. So I have a very unique experience my current department and coming into coming into construction support as well. And like you asked, it's collaboration across the board, and it's really interesting. And I will say that a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, I try to tell students how important it is to learn about collaboration and to be willing to collaborate and just working with other people, and take all the opportunities you possibly can. If someone offers you an opportunity, grab it, learn it, go for it. Definitely. What are What should ask, what exactly are you designing on the submarine? Are you doing more internal work or external work? What is it that you do with the submarine?
I can't say a lot about it for
Okay.
operational security reasons, but
Oh,
I work mostly I work in the external structures department. So we work with the hull structures and we work with any hull penetrations. That includes working with, as I said, purchasing in regards to when we are getting parts from vendors, when we are sending parts between vendors. All of those penetrations are actually forged because the area it's taking from the proper hull structure itself has to be compensated for appropriately for strength and for welding. And so that is what my home department does. And like I said, down in Virginia, I'm learning a lot about the mechanical, the piping, some of the electrical side as well.
interesting, fascinating. What are the innovations or new technologies that are impacting submarine design?
A lot of new materials are coming out and coming around. Also, technology is very helpful for building submarines. It's actually allowing us to build them in what we are calling modules. So instead of having to put the entire submarine together and then weld everything in place in a closed structure, we are actually able to create cylinders and then stack them up and then load things into the end and then weld it together in its entirety. So Uh, that's definitely an innovation. A very interesting one that was kind of controversial last June is we are obviously getting a lot of younger sailors who have grown up on gaming systems.
Mhm.
And so they were trying to determine how best to be able to teach young sailors to control the periscope system because previous generations, of course, came up with typewriters and computers, but the newer generations needed something a little more intuitive.
Ah,
So the solution to that, interestingly enough, is an Xbox controller because submariners, it makes sense to them. And because a lot of them tend to be gamers and, gaming consoles really came into their own. And so that's how the Virginia class actually controls its periscope is by an Xbox controller because it's very easy to teach sailors the X button does this, the triangle button does this, rather than trying to teach them a whole new language of coding.
ah. And were you part of this discovery? Were you part of this, of giving ideas about
I was
this?
not. This is that's something that I kind of had to learn on my own. Outside of my job, I
Mhm.
was joking actually on the trip that I met you. Most people go on vacation and they leave their job at their desk at the end of the day. Meanwhile, on my trip, I had that Saturday free. And of course, the first thing I did was find out what was around. And I was like, oh, the National Nuclear Museum is out here.
Yeah.
And so the day that we got there, me and my teammates actually went to Barnes and Noble. And I went and got a copy of Blind Man's Bluff because my last copy is missing somewhere. And that's a book about submarine warfare in the 1980s. So there are times that I'll be driving and I'll be listening to a podcast about, Virginia submarines. I'm still working through The Hunt for Red October, which is a very popular 80s movie, which was a book first, as well as a book on the USS Thresher, which was a nuclear submarine that was lost with all hands in 1963 off the coast of Cape Cod.
Hmm.
And out of that loss actually came a program that is still very much practiced, very much at the forefront of the Navy electric boat, Newport News shipbuilding, called SubSafe, which is the submarine safety program. And first and foremost, as I was saying, it centralizes and standardizes the um, integrity of the hull that protects our sailors.
Ah, wonderful. Oh, interesting. Was there a project that you worked on that really stands out? Something that you were part of that really, really stands out?
A very cool project that I got to work on. Again, I can't really say a lot about what I work on, but a very cool project that I did work on was the floating dry dock that will be attached to the South Yard Assembly Building um, at our yard up in Groton. That will actually be used to launch the next generation of Virginia class submarines, as well as the Columbia class submarine that will be used to take it out into take it out and float off the submarine for the first time.
Oh,
And during my internship, it was a very convenient short-term project for my intern department for me to do the electronic building of the model for testing, or rather for analysis.
that would have been exciting. That would have definitely stood out. Oh, neat. And you have to tell me about your passion for ballet. Since I'm a musician and I'm in the arts, do you still do ballet or do you still
Um,
love ballet?
I don't do it formally anymore. I did it very seriously from the age of probably seriously around 8 until I graduated high school.
Mhm.
By the time I was a sophomore in high school, I was training. I think it was 6 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that was, of course, not during Nutcracker season, where I would have rehearsals most Friday nights, Saturdays after class, and then come Tech Week, you were there every night, Sunday to Saturday until about 10 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
With Sunday through Thursday being Tech Week. Friday we had two school shows, and then you were free for the afternoon. Saturday we had a matinee and an evening show, and Sunday you had the matinee and the cast party. So dance has always been something I've done. Dance is the reason I actually studied French in middle and high school. And even now, I picked up tap dancing. I started jazz. Admittedly, I'm a big Dance Moms fan. So even now, I will still make time to make combinations, practice my jumps. And there have been more than a few times that I have been waiting to heat up my lunch or reheat my coffee or my tea. And I have been found by more than one coworker practicing my turns and my combinations in front of the microwave.
That's wonderful. That's cute. Well, I've got some student questions for you if you'd like to answer some of the questions.
Absolutely. I would love
Um,
to.
yeah, this is from an 11th grader. Did you know you wanted to be a civil engineer in high school? And did high school counselors help you understand various careers?
I've actually known that I wanted to be an engineer since I was about 4. I was a particularly stubborn child. And so one of my very first activities that I did that was very engineering focused was building with the groceries on the conveyor belt. Of course, my poor mother, a mother of 2, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, was like, "Don't do that. It's going to make it so much harder. It's going to fall. You're going to make a mess." Okay, challenge accepted. So my first engineering challenge was always, are the groceries going to fall on the conveyor belt? I think not. So, and I've always been very good at math. I've always been very precocious at math. In 2nd grade, I was doing my 5th grade sister's math homework. I was driving my 3rd grade teacher insane from day 1 because she expected nobody to know long division, and then I walked in the room. So I've always known math and engineering and building. And then at 15, talking with the Coast Guard cadet, we were talking about the Tacoma Narrows bridge disaster, which very few people have one of these, but that is one of my more passionate bridge disasters. The Key Bridge being another one. I always joke most people don't have a favorite bridge in a favorite building. However, mine happened to be the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Tunnel and the Freedom Tower in New York City. I know all sorts of random facts about them, and I'll spare you all. But I knew that engineering was where I wanted to go, and talking with the cadet, explaining the differences between architectural engineering, which is more design and tweaking it, and civil engineering, which was really hands-on, designing it, analyzing it, doing the math, and putting it all together. That was where I wanted to go. And my counselors, Mrs. Cacase at East Lyme High School, I don't know if she'll ever see this, but maybe, she really, really helped me through my first 2 years of high school before I transferred. And she encouraged me actually to transfer to the magnet school and said, you know, if that's where you go, that's where you go. And after coming back from Christmas break and telling my advisor and my principal and my guidance counselors at Three Rivers Middle College, she was the next call I made, was letting her know, hey, I know I transferred and I know I'm not technically on your caseload anymore, but I thought you should know. Remember when we met as a freshman and I said I want to go to the University of Hartford? I made it. So I've known engineering was where I wanted to go. I've known the university was where I wanted to go. So I have kept plugging sometimes in the face of people telling me maybe you should try something else. Maybe this isn't for you. And much like my best friend, we both look at everyone who said that and said, we made it anyways.
Yes. Yeah. We made it anyway. I love that. Um, Another student, a 9th grader, asks, what is a typical day like? What kind of projects do you work on? We covered some of the projects, I know. So, like, what's a typical day like?
A typical day right now is, you know, the standard. I get up. I should get up earlier than I'm about to say. I get up about 5:30 because my job is currently asking us to work overtime. It's a tempered suggestion at best. And so I get up at about 5:30. I'm usually at the office by 6:30. I log in, I check my emails, I see what's come back to me, and then I will go into our software and see if anything has been assigned to me overnight. and I will start digging into that. Everyone arrives between 6:30 and 9. We definitely have our stragglers who really cut that close to 9. Um, and then from there, it's following up on emails, making phone calls, incorporating. I do a lot of incorporating comments. I've been doing a lot of peer reviewing. I always joke that engineers get into the job because we're really good at math and we really like doing math, and we all really hate to write. And then I tell everyone to take a wild guess how we make our living every day, because we do a lot of writing. So it really allows me to brush up on my technical communication. There's a lot of communication outside our department, inside our department. There will be times that we have to go down to the shipyard, sorry. So we have to go check on something physically and visually see what they've done with it, to make sure it's correct. And then I usually get home around 5. Sometimes there will be days, for example, tomorrow, it is one of my coworkers' significant other's birthdays, and she is also part of our rock climbing crew. So we are going across the bridge to her favorite gym, and we are going to go rock climbing tomorrow night. And then I anticipate we'll be hanging out for a bit afterwards. But usually I get home, I'll make something for dinner and, kind of chill out for the night if I have the opportunity. Sometimes, like I said, we'll get together with my coworkers, and it's a lot of fun. Down here in Virginia, they're very tight. It's a very good team environment. So it's not serious all day long. I continue to joke that I've really got to stop getting positions where I get brothers, because I grew up with a sister, and well, I love the guys that I work with. Sometimes I'm like, how did you all survive? So there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of seriousness, but it's a good way to work. It's a very good environment to work in.
Great. And a 12th grader asks, what kind of materials and construction methods are used to build submarines? I don't know
We
if that's
use
legal or not.
Yes, we use high strength steel, nickel copper aluminum, and yeah, more high strength steel. And we weld everything together because bolted connections under pressure tend to rattle. And since the idea of submarines is for them to be silent, we minimize bolted connections as much as possible.
Right. Oh, interesting. And a 7th grade student asks, how much time do you actually spend on a submarine?
As of right now, at entry level, I can spend not a lot of time. Like I said, we do go on ship checks down to the shipyard more often down here than we do up in Groton, because we do have to drive out to Quonset Point, Rhode Island, to our manufacturing facilities. So it is a bit of a drive. So we try to minimize that or pile on as much as we can in one day. So that can lead to a good 4 or 5 hours walking around the shipyard and then an hour drive each way. So it's a very early morning and a very long afternoon.
Hmm.
So we spend some time in the yard, but a lot of your time as an engineer is spent in the office. But you do get an opportunity to go see the submarine, if you're being taken along for a tour of the yard, which is always really fun, or you can tag along on a yard visit. You can go into different pieces of it because some of them are in pieces. We are usually building several boats at the same time. So some of them are in pieces. So you can go into different sections and see what's being built and how it all comes together, which is really interesting.
Hmm.
But as you get more senior, especially when you get to, higher levels in management, think your CEO suites, they are taken along. There are always shipbuilders and higher level management taken along on sea trials because, especially after subsafe, you kind of need to have some skin in the game for what you build. So you have to remember that when you are building, not only are you keeping the sailors safe, you are also keeping your coworkers safe, both of which are very important to me. I'm going to go off on a bit of a side trip. I worked with the Navy Child and Youth Programs in Groton, right by the sub base. So for me, when I'm thinking about, am I ready to sign my name to this? I am thinking about, am I going to is this going to be safe enough to bring my kids' parents home? Because to me, every kid that I worked with in that building is one of my kids, whether I worked with them for 5 minutes or 5 years. There are some kids in that program who I've known since they started kindergarten. So for me, that is very much paramount and in the front of my mind because I know the building where those kids spend every day after school and every day in the summer. And I can imagine officers having to go in there and them having to call my kids to the gym and tell them and have to wait for their parents. And I will not, I will not be complicit in that. Everything I sign my name to will be the best that I can do, which is why it's important that you go through your peer reviews and you really make sure you're turning out the best technical content.
Yes. How long does it take to build a submarine from beginning to end?
That depends on if you're talking about how long does it take to design and then build it or simply build one.
Simply build one.
I believe the timeline we are trying to accomplish is about 2 years. Again, my experience is in the Columbia program, which we are in the midst of construction of, but that has been in design for several years now. I Last I heard, I think the program started coming into existence somewhere around 2012. So we are attempting to put Columbia on an 84-month schedule, which is 7 years. And we are continually pushing that as part of the requested overtime to keep on that schedule. So, but hopefully, once we work out the issues with with the lead boat, as we call it, um, each Columbia afterwards will take about 2 years. The Navy is requesting 2 Virginias and 1 Columbia each year
Mm.
to alternate, I believe, alternate building per shipyard.
Interesting. And a middle school student asks, are all submarines the same? Or are there different types of submarines?
I'm glad they asked. There are different types of submarines. There are two main classes, which is your fast attacks. So anytime you see a submarine in the news or a picture, most of the pictures that are shown are called SSNs, that is submersible ship nuclear. Those are your fast attack submarines. That is Virginia class and Los Angeles class. Los Angeles class is also considered a 688 boat because that was the number of the lead boat. And those are starting to get phased out. Electric Boat actually currently has the last of the engineering overhaul on SSN 768, the USS Hartford, which has a special place in my heart as I went to the University of Hartford. And one of my professors that I actually worked closely with my last couple of years as the dean of the College of Engineering, Technology, and Architecture, which he merged. Shout out to Dean Haddad. He was actually invited to the launching of that submarine. So, and my best friend is one of the supervisors on that overhaul, which is really cool. So, your SSNs are your fast attacks. Those are your 688s and your Virginia class submarines. And then you have your SSBNs, which is submersible ship ballistic nuclear, which are your strategic deterrents. Those are your big and slows. They're also called boomers. And those are the ones that are carrying the actual nuclear warheads.
So there are only two types of submarines, basically?
Yes.
Right. Oh, very
At least in the
interesting.
U.S. Navy, but I believe most are following a similar
Mhm.
theory. The UK SSBNs are called the Dreadnought class, which is either the new class or the current class. I'm not sure.
Mm. Thank you. An 11th grade student asks, how does your work factor in water conditions like corrosion and water pressure?
So water pressure is definitely considered. I can't talk much to it because that is very, very proprietary, confidential information.
Okay.
But corrosion is prevented in multiple ways. There is a coating on the hull that is used for a couple different things, corrosion being one of them, and all pieces are painted before they are coated in this. So it has less chance. However, obviously, we do have things on the outside, such as the penetrations that I mentioned, and all of those that actually goes through our materials and corrosion control. And every drawing that is issued has to have a corrosion control plan if it is relevant to it, up to including something I worked on. They're 2-inch pucks that tell shipyard workers where they are on the hull. And even those had to have some type of corrosion control mitigation to ensure that those didn't get corroded while they were out to sea, including corrosion resistant materials such as nickel copper.
Interesting. And another student, my college student asks, as a woman in a male-dominated field, what obstacles have you faced and how did you deal with them?
Definitely the traditional obstacles of men having to kind of realize that I am an equal. I have worked just as they have to get my spot at the table, and I need them to take me just as seriously. I have dealt with a couple of issues in the office, which has been interesting, but thankfully I've been lucky to have two wonderful supervisors who, as soon as they heard about it, they were right on top of it. Both of those situations have sorted themselves out in various ways. It was actually a lot harder in college than it was in the working world because it is much more competitive. It is a lot harder for my classmates to take me seriously. And it was very, very frustrating, especially with cross cultural interactions. But each time I was just sure to keep my professors read in on the situation, ensuring they knew what was going on. I documented everything. And most of the time, my professors were willing to work with me. There were a couple of times in the department, not necessarily in my classes, that things were said within my hearing that were not supposed to be, and that were absolutely inappropriate for someone to be saying. And the one time that that happened, and I did overhear it and I didn't know what to do with it, I took it to one of the people who works in the College of Engineering's student office. And he sent me to diversity and inclusion, and they sent me to the Title IX office. And it was, I don't know if it was dealt with, but it was reported and it was on record.
Good, good. Well, you've come a long ways. Oh, well, thank you so much. Um, I'd like to close the interview with three questions. And the first one is what advice would you give young people today in
I
general?
would tell them to keep changing the world, keep doing what you're doing because it really is wonderful. And every time I look around and I see that you are fighting for change, it gives me hope that maybe, just maybe, the kids are going to be all right. And the other advice I would give is it doesn't matter what anyone around you says, go after what you want because doing it in spite of them has just the same feeling as doing it with them, if not better, because everybody along the way might tell you you can't or you won't, or, you're not anything because you're trying to do this in a world that won't accept you. And showing them 10 years down the line that you can feels amazing.
Yes, yeah. I faced that too a lot, being a female classical guitarist. Um, when I grew up, there was women didn't play classical guitar, and I was the only female, taking lessons, and it was very different. And I really had to stand up for myself and ignore things that were said about me. People were trying to tear me down. It was competitive, especially in college. But I did what I love, and I still do. I always do what I love. So my next question is, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is when I look around and I see kids going after what they want. I see where I've gone. Um, I look at my sister, who is 3 years and 13 days, 1 hour and 59 minutes, but we've never counted. She's older than me, and she's been working towards her dream job, same thing, since she was about 7. She's wanted to work for NASA. She now works at Johnson Space Center in Houston. She just started earlier this year. So looking at my sister working her dream job, even with the time change, gives me hope. Looking at my military kids growing up, I don't always get to see where their story ends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends. Um, and looking at them taking their parents' deployments in stride, taking the moving every 2 years in stride, it is inspiring, and that gives me hope that we're raising a generation of very resilient kids. The motto of a military child is bloom where you're planted, and the flower of a military child is the dandelion, because the seeds of a dandelion are blown all over the place and they find anywhere they can, and they grow into beautiful, beautiful flowers. And they can be a little rough around the edges, but they are truly gorgeous. And the last thing when I think of what gives me hope is seeing working parents. um, Chelsea Memel is a previous Olympian, who staged to come back to elite gymnastics at 32 as a mom of two. And she competed at elite level competitions at 32. And she is now the technical lead for the women's development program. And I actually had an opportunity to attend a camp at her home gym last year
Oh,
and talk to her. And one of the first questions I asked after explaining I worked with military kids was, how are your kids handling the traveling? And she said, they see it as their normal. They understand, they know what I'm doing. And it looks to me like she takes them with her whenever she can, which likely means they'll be going to Paris this summer. So it was very interesting to hear. And I look at my supervisor up in Groton, and he is a working parent as well of two young girls. And he is very, very serious and very strict about making sure that his parenting time, in his work rather, does not interfere with his parenting. There are times that he will leave and he'll say, I have to go. One of my kids has parent teacher conferences. They have a thing at the preschool. And he says, I have to go. We'll pick back up on this tomorrow. I need to go. And he will block out that time on his calendar. And that is truly inspiring, that a parent working such a high stress job like we do, is able to put everything down and say, I can come back to it tomorrow. I have to go. My kids have something.
that's beautiful. And the last question is, who inspires you?
Um, Chelsea Memel, again, adult gymnast, can't help it. Again, staging that comeback at age 32 after having retired, in 2008 was her Olympics, and coming back 12 years later. She had said it wasn't, she was hesitant to say it was a comeback until, again, I had heard the story at her camp last year. She was hesitant to say it was a comeback until her sister told her, oh, by the way, I signed you up for classics. And so she kind of didn't have a choice at that point, because that roster was about to become public knowledge. And so she announced it on her YouTube and said, well, I'm coming back. So that was, and then of course her comeback, her training, watching her compete and watching her fall on bars was heartbreaking, but also watching her say, you know what, I know when my body's had it and I can't get back up and finish. I can't do that to myself. And I've asked her, how does she handle a bad practice? And she says, just kind of leave it on the floor. What happens at practice happens at practice. And, you come back and you continue working on it another day. You set a number of repetitions before you're done, and that's that. And so that is, she definitely inspires me. And like I said, my supervisor as well, being a working parent, watching him balance so well. He working parents, my military kids, everyone I've already mentioned, they all are my inspirations.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful interview. The students are going to love listening to this. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll get your information, and perhaps if students have a question, I can email you or contact you with their questions in the future.
Absolutely, I would love
Yeah,
that.
I'd love to stay in touch. So thank you again. Thank you so much. And
Absolutely, thank you.
you're very welcome. And everybody watching this video, thank you for listening. And this has been inspirational. All the information about One Voice for Change, career landscapes, and Serina will be in the links below. And please like, subscribe, and share this with anyone you know. So thank you again on behalf of One Voice for Change. Thank you, Serina, and we will be in touch. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.